Porsche prices are falling fast, and not just the cheap ones. China's demand has collapsed. US tariffs are biting, and EVs like the Taycan are bleeding value. It's chaos in Stuttgart, but a gift for drivers. Because while collectors panic, the smart money's moving in. And this year, 3 models, the 996 Turbo, the 981 Cayman GTS, and the 997.2 Carrera S are where the deals are hiding. The Porsche market in 2025 feels like someone pulled the handbrake at full speed. Prices are tanking, demand's collapsing, and the once can't-lose investment cars are losing tens of thousands overnight. We're not talking entry-level Boxsters. This storm's hitting the icons, the 911s, the Turbos, and the GTS models. The worst hit? China. Porsche's biggest growth market just cratered with a 42% sales drop in Q1 2025. Analysts called it catastrophic, and they're not exaggerating. The luxury market there flatlined so fast, Porsche lost $114 million in April and May alone. Over in the US, things didn't get much better. New 25% import tariffs kicked in this April, instantly adding $7,000 to $10,000 to each car. Instead of passing that on, dealers are eating the loss, meaning they're desperate to move cars. Quiet discounts, limited time deals, trade-in sweeteners. It's chaos disguised as customer care. But here's where things start getting interesting. Amid the chaos, the tariffs, the EV collapse, the used 911 gut, a few Porsche models have quietly become the smartest buys in years. These aren't speculative flips or overhyped collectibles, they're real drivers' cars, finally priced like it's 2015 again. And topping that list is the 996 Turbo, the underdog that's suddenly looking like the smartest Porsche money can buy. The 996 Turbo has always lived in the shadow of its prettier siblings, but let's be honest, this is the car that turned Porsche's engineering into pure brute force. Under the skin sits the legendary 3.6-liter twin-turbo Mezger engine, the same bulletproof unit found in the GT2 and GT3. It pushes 420 horsepower standard, or 450 horsepower if you tick the rare X50 package. With a 6-speed manual or Tiptronic and all-wheel drive, it's still a monster off the line, 0 to 60 in just 4 seconds flat. Porsche built only about 15,000 of them worldwide, and most were actually driven hard, not stashed away, which somehow makes clean survivors even cooler. A year ago, these cars were still holding strong at $55,000 to $85,000 depending on mileage, but by mid-2025, prices have slid into the $45,000 to $75,000 range, a solid 10 to 15% correction. One real-world example, a 2004 model with 90,000 miles, recently sold for $68,000 after the seller dropped the price twice from $78,000. That's the kind of movement we're seeing across the board. Sellers realizing the post-COVID every Porsche is gold fantasy is finally over. Now, what makes the 996 Turbo stand out is that it's immune to one of Porsche's most infamous problems, the IMS bearing failure. The Mezger engine doesn't use it, which means buyers don't have to worry about catastrophic repair bills. Combine that with old-school steering feel, brutal acceleration, and that unmistakable analog charm, and you've got a car that's finally priced for enthusiasts again, not investors. As one collector recently put it, the 996 Turbo is where sanity returns to the Porsche market. Now, that's something worth driving, and not just watching lose value on Bring a Trailer. But if the 996 Turbo is the comeback kid of the Porsche world, the 981 Cayman GTS is the modern classic quietly aging like fine wine. It's the car that balanced Porsche's precision engineering with genuine soul, the sweet spot before turbochargers, hybrid talk, and EV politics crept in. Under the hood sits a 3.4-liter naturally aspirated flat 6, making 340 horsepower, paired with either a 6-speed manual or the lightning-quick PDK. The mid-engine layout gives it perfect balance. Literally. It can pull 1.1 G on the skid pad, which is absurd for something you can do daily without breaking your spine. Only about 2,000 examples ever came to the US, which makes every clean, low-mileage one a bit of a unicorn. What makes the 981 GTS so special is its timing. It was the last naturally aspirated Cayman before Porsche went all in on turbos for the 718 lineup. It represents a turning point, the last breath of mechanical purity before the brand started chasing emissions and efficiency stats. Reviewers at the time called it sophisticated, refined, devastating on twisty roads. And they were right. With the 718's electrification looming, these naturally aspirated models are starting to feel like artifacts of a better driving era. Value-wise, however, it's following the same downward drift as the rest of the Porsche lineup, but that's not bad news for buyers. Prices that once hovered around $75,000 to $100,000 in 2024 have now eased to $65,000 to $95,000. That's roughly an 8 to 10% correction. One example, with 35,000 miles, sold in January of 2025 for $78,000, down from $88,000 just 6 months earlier. Another with 60,000 miles changed hands in February for $75,000, a massive $15,000 drop from its 2023 peak. In other words, the 981 GTS isn't losing value because it's falling out of favor, it's becoming accessible. Buyers aren't ditching these cars. They're finally able to afford them, and with Porsche's next-gen Caymans leaning toward electrification, these might be the last time a pure, naturally aspirated GTS feels even remotely within reach. So, while the market's in freefall, the 981 is quietly emerging as the thinking driver's bargain, the one that'll make you smile every mile, even if it's technically down on paper. Now, the 981 Cayman GTS is Porsche's elegant swan song for the naturally aspirated mid-engine era. The 997.2 Carrera S is the definitive last word for the classic 911 formula. It's the perfect bridge between the analog charm of older Porsches and the livability of the modern ones, the moment before the brand went full digital. It packs a 3.8-liter naturally aspirated flat six, pushing 385 horsepower, paired with either a traditional manual or one of the earliest versions of PDK. Rear-wheel drive keeps things lively, while hydraulic steering, the last of its kind before electric systems took over, gives you that old-school Porsche road feel everyone still raves about. It's raw but composed, powerful yet communicative, and most importantly, it's free from the infamous IMS issues that plagued earlier 911s. This generation also nailed the aesthetics. The proportions were pure 911. Compact, muscular, perfectly balanced between classic and modern. It was, in many ways, the last 911 that felt truly mechanical before the digital era crept in. That's why enthusiasts keep calling the 997.2 peak 911 territory. On the pricing front, reality's finally caught up here too. In 2024, you'd need $65,000 to $90,000 for a good example with 50,000 to 80,000 miles. But by mid-2025, that's shifted to about $55,000 to $85,000, roughly a 10 to 12% drop. A clean 50,000-mile car that would have been a $90,000 listing a year ago just sold for $80,000. Sellers are adjusting expectations fast, and buyers are quietly taking advantage. The best part? The 997.2 Carrera S is one of the few Porsches where depreciation doesn't hurt, it liberates. The cars haven't lost their magic, they've just lost the markup. What you're getting now is a pure rear-engine hydraulic steering 911 experience without the speculator tax. In a market obsessed with tech and torque figures, the 997.2 reminds us that sometimes the best value isn't in what's new, it's in what still feels alive every time you twist the key. Now, before anyone starts rating the classifieds, let's talk about the part no one likes: maintenance reality. Because buying a used Porsche, even at a discount, still means paying Porsche bills. These aren't cars you can run on a Civic budget, but with smart planning, you can avoid most surprises and actually enjoy the ownership experience instead of sweating over the next repair quote. Now, for the 996 Turbo, it might be built like a tank, but even tanks need service. The turbo seals are known to fail eventually, and replacing them can run about $3,000. Around the 80,000 to 100,000 mile mark, expect to deal with coolant pipe replacements, which is roughly $1,500 for a proper job. The silver lining, though, is huge. No IMS bearing issues thanks to the Mezger engine's bulletproof design. Still, if you're unlucky, a differential failure can hit the wallet hard, figure around $7,000. It's rare, yes, but worth having a safety cushion for just in case. The 981 GTS is much newer and less maintenance heavy, but it's also not invincible. The water pump tends to need replaced around 60,000 miles, which is about $900, and engine mounts can wear with time, budget around $1,000 for those. Now, the big fear with flat six Caymans, the bore scoring, is practically non-existent here, less than 1% of cases and almost always tied to poor maintenance. Keep up on oil changes and warm-ups and you'll likely never see that issue. Now for the 997.2, the most common items are wear-related. Coil packs often fail near 80,000 miles, about $1,200 to replace all 6 of them. The PASM shocks, those adaptive suspension units, start wearing out around 100,000 miles, costing roughly $2,000 for a refresh. Again, like the 996 Turbo, this generation completely dodges the IMS nightmare, making it far less stressful to own long term. So yes, even in a buyer's market, you'll want to keep a few $1,000s in reserve for maintenance. But when the car in your garage sounds like a symphony on every downshift, those repair bills feel a lot more like an investment in happiness than a financial mistake. And there you have it. The market's bleeding, values are sliding, and speculators are gone. But for once, that's good news. The 996 Turbo, 981 Cayman GTS, and 997.2 Carrera S aren't just cheap, they're finally attainable. Cars built for roads, not auctions. The kind of machines that remind you why Porsche earned its reputation long before it started chasing EV range and resale graphs. These are the last of the real ones, and 2025 might be the only time you'll ever see them this low again, because when the dust settles, history has a funny way of rewarding the people who bought while everyone else was scared.